American Timelines is a member of the Queen City Podcast Network, powered by Ortho Carolina. Find out more at queencitypodcastnetwork.com.
So now I'm obsessed with time. Come on, tell me about the time. Had it all in my hand tonight. Had the time of my life. When the words all come down like
I'm drinking a Moscow Mule. This is Moscow Mule number 2. It's a can. You can get them at the liquor store now with ginger beer, vodka, and lime juice in a can.
Vodka.
So pretty cool. So welcome to episode 174 of American Timelines by History for Jerks. I am joined this week to cover April 1954 by two History for Jerks All-Stars.
Two.
Not one, two.
Dos.
We've got from the Gruff and Loud show, we've got Gruff back to help co-host this episode.
I don't know why I'm waving.
And welcome back. He's waving on the Zoom call. And please welcome back from the Nerd School. We've had him on American Timelines once before. Ladies and gentlemen, Art Star from the Nerd School. Artemis Prime.
Finally, Art Star has returned to American Timeline.
It's been too long for both of you guys.
I've been prepping all week just to do my really bad rock impression. All week in prepping.
That's awesome. And you didn't even say anything about smelling what you're cooking.
Oh no, I just wanted to do the finally part. I just wanted to do the finally part. You know, because one, it buys into the greatness that I am. And I know if TBJ happens to hit his episode, she's going to be like, he had to do it. He had to do it. You know? So,
one of these times I got to have you and TBJ both on American Timelines. It'll be just to let you guys.
It'll be hectic. It'll be so hectic.
All right. Well, as you guys know, we go through American history month by month, year by year. And we left off in March of 1954. So now we're in April of 1954. And I think this might be the first episode where there's not, we're not really talking about a murder or a rape.
Oh, wow.
I sort of allude to some crime. I have what do you call it? A defection, a Russian defection to Australia.
Was there any killing?
True crime. There's some rape. There is some rape. I'm not sure if there's some.
There's probably some crime that didn't make the news.
Well,
yeah.
I do have a plane crash. I've got some death, but I got some birthdays. But let's start off April 1954 with something. Are we ready for the first birthday?
I'm always ready.
You guys like birthdays?
I'm a fan of birthdays.
I'm not. Oddly enough, my birthday is this Wednesday. I'm excited.
Your birthday's coming up, Art Star.
Holy shit!
I'm excited.
Happy early birthday, Art Star.
Why? Thank you. I'm excited for my birthday, but when it comes to other birthdays, I can't.
Actually,
Cal Ripken's birthday. I'm a big fan of Cal Ripken. His birthday is August 24th, 1960. That's my
Just throwing it out there. This is a Baltimore. This guy's from Baltimore, Art Star. So of course you're a Cal Ripken fan. But this episode will be coming out on your birthday. So happy birthday to Art Star, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy birthday,
if you
Art
listen
Star.
to this episode, reach out to Art Star on Twitter and wish him happy birthday. It's at
Art Star version 9. Art Star V9 rather.
Art Star at Art Star V9 on Twitter. Okay. So reach out, wish him a happy birthday. Start following him. He's always tweeting.
Start following Nerd School.
Yep. He's tweeting toys and stuff. So we got our first birthday. So I'm going to play the intro music, even though we can't change the lyrics to Steve Bishop doesn't mind birthdays, or Gruff doesn't mind birthdays, or Art Star kinda only cares about his own birthday.
He's selfish.
No, there's Cal Ripken too.
Oh yeah, that's Cal. Yeah.
He cares about Cal Ripken.
Amy hates birthdays. Amy hates birthdays.
April 2nd, 1954, American actor and teacher best known for his role as the endearingly dim-witted character Arnold Horshack on the ABC sitcom Welcome Back, Kotter, Ron Palillo was born.
Yeah.
You know who that is?
Mr. Carter. Ooh, Mr. Carter, Mr. Carter.
Carter. That's one of
That
the
was
only
much
impressions
better than mine. Yeah.
Still one of the only impressions I do is as Ron Palillo. He was born in New Haven, Connecticut, to Italian Americans Gabriel and Carmel Paolillo, and raised in nearby Cheshire. He graduated from Cheshire High School, red and white team colors, home of the Rams. Notable
I think
alumni.
they'd be the Cats.
Notable alumni include Brad Ausmus, Major League Baseball All-Star catcher and manager. You are familiar with him, Art Star?
I am familiar with Brad Austin. Played with the Tigers, coached San Diego. Yeah.
Boom, big fan.
Nice.
Yeah.
Another notable alumni is Alan Hoskins, CEO of Energizer. Are you familiar with Energizer batteries, Steve?
I am. I prefer Duracell or Endoloop rechargeables, but I am aware.
Anyway, Ron Palillo he went to the University of Connecticut at Storrs, where he would later teach in the 1990s. He attended Fairfield University while pursuing a postgraduate degree, and he adopted the last name Palillo, even though his name was Paolillo, for his acting career. So now you guys know that about Ron Palillo. He wore red and white, home of the Rams. And
Thank
that's
you.
all the time we have.
We appreciate you taking the time of your day to listen.
Okay, April 3rd.
Come back next time when it's
Actually,
sorry.
on April 3rd, the next day after Ron Palillo was born. Ron Palillo was a newborn baby at the hospital, and the very next day, a rope climbing record was made. Rope climbing, a sport in which competitors attempt to climb up a suspended vertical rope using only their hands. It's practiced regularly at World Police and Fire Games, and is currently enjoying a resurgence in France, where competitions are held in shopping centers.
Shopping centers?
Yeah. Enthusiasts in the Czech Republic resurrected the sport in 1993, and they hold local and national competitions. According to USAGymLegacy.org, no one will ever climb a 20-foot rope faster than Don Perry's world record on April 3rd, 1954, of 2.8 seconds in competition.
Wow.
Damn.
20 feet in 2.8 seconds.
That's
Just your arms.
fucking ridiculous. That is
His
fast.
upper body strength must be amazing.
Yep. He was a 4-time national AAU champion, 2-time NCAA champion, and a world
And rope climbing?
Yep. Well, I guess.
I mean, like
He probably did other stuff too. But this was a world record-setting performance. Oh, he had a world record-setting performance at the 1955 Pan American Games after a 3-day battle with flu-like symptoms, and made him one of the greatest of all time in his event. Yeah, which is this, I guess. And by his career's end, he had an unofficial 95-0 record. Nobody ever beat him at rope climbing.
Wow.
Don Perry.
Damn.
Now you know Don Perry's name.
Hey, ladies, I'm Don Perry, and I can climb a rope in less than 3 seconds.
I will say, in
climb
elementary
rope
school,
faster than Don Perry, man. Bullshit.
in elementary school, I was one of the few kids that could climb all the way up to in the gym and ring the.
Was there a bell up there that you had to ring?
We had a bell,
Yeah.
and I could climb up there. But it was more than anything, it was the heights that I wanted to stop. But I could do it. I was scared to get down. I remember.
I can't remember ever even really trying. I think after they saw me kind of waddle back and forth on the pegboard, they were just like, never, he's not going to do it.
Yeah, I looked at that rope and I was like, fuck that. I ain't climbing that shit.
No,
I ain't trying to get rope burned.
No. When they had open gym, I sat in the corner and used my imagination. You know, that's why I exercised my imagination.
All right, that same day on April 3rd, we're going to get into this KGB.
The defection.
Australian defection. Okay, this is known as the Petrov Affair. It was a Cold War spy incident in Australia concerning the defection of Vladimir Petrov, who was a KGB officer from the Soviet embassy in Canberra, Australia in 1954. And Petrov, despite his relatively junior diplomatic status, was a colonel in what became the KGB in 1954. It was the Soviet secret police, if you don't know what that is, but everybody knows what that is. Right. And his wife was an MVD. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I haven't,
but I have not either.
It's the Ministry of Internal Affairs in Russia. I'm not sure what the letter stands for, but the Petrovs had been sent to the Canberra embassy in Australia in 1951 by the Soviet security chief Lavrentiy Beria. Lavrentiy Beria was an awful piece of shit, I think. He had a trial in 1953, and it became known that he committed numerous rapes during the years he was the NKVD chief. A biographer of Stalin named Simon Sebag Montefiore concluded that information reveals that a sexual predator who uses power to indulge himself in obsessive depravity is who Beria was. After his death, these charges of sexual abuse and rape were disputed by people close to him, including his wife, Nina, and his son. However, according to official testimony in Soviet archives, two of Beria's bodyguards, they gave testimony that said on warm nights during the war, Beria was often driven around Moscow in his limousine. He would point out young women that he wanted to be taken to his mansion, where wine and a feast awaited them. After dining, Beria would take the women into a soundproof office and rape them. His bodyguards reported that their duties included handing each victim a flower bouquet as she left the house. Accepting it implied that the sex had been consensual, and refusal would mean arrest.
Damn.
So this is the fucking guy that sent the Petrovs to Australia from Russia.
This was the shittiest of bosses.
Yes.
Like all around.
Yeah. It's just to know that what kind
of
even
if he treated them well, he was a shitty boss.
But okay, so after Joseph Stalin's death in March of 1953, Beria had been arrested and shot by Stalin's successors. And so Vladimir Petrov, who's here in Australia, evidently feared that if he returned to the Soviet Union, he would be purged as a Beria man. Like they'd be like, oh, he was one of the guy's dudes. So we're going to just kill him. So Petrov made contact with the Australian Security Intelligence Organization, the ASIO, and he offered to provide evidence of Soviet espionage in exchange for political asylum. The defection was arranged by Michael Bialogowski.
Okay.
He was a Polish doctor and musician who I looked him up a little bit. He turns out he desperately wanted to be a conductor, but he kind of sucked at being a conductor. But he insisted, like he kept trying to be a music conductor.
Good for him.
And he would even hire symphonies just so he could conduct. And he would always get lukewarm reviews, and everybody thought he was terrible. But he wanted to be a conductor. That's this guy's passion. And so he was a part-time ASIO agent who had cultivated Petrov for nearly 2 years, befriending him, and taking him to visit prostitutes in Sydney King's Cross area. So,
friendship.
Yeah. So
I just recently I was watching I love British television and Australian television.
Yeah.
And there was this series that was, I want to say, probably around that time frame, where they would have like dignitaries going to Australia, and they would get prostitutes for them, to like grease their palms, so to speak, to get them to like transport people back and forth between between Britain and Australia. And I'm like, it's kind of ironic to hear you talk about that also going on with Russia and Australia.
Maybe it was just a general tactic. Like, first step liquors, second step hookers.
You think it's more funny that you were just watching something about that and we're talking about that? Is that what's funny?
I don't want to say it's funny. Maybe I should ironic. It was
Not funny,
ironic.
haha.
Not
funny,
funny,
Right,
interesting.
no.
right. I don't
You
want this to get back to TBJ.
Yeah,
and
I was
end up
thinking
getting-
that same thing.
I don't want to get canceled.
And you're problematic, yeah.
I'm a Sith, so I don't want to get canceled as a Sith. But
Yes.
go ahead.
Hey, man, people stop understanding after the Gray Jedi. It's just
Okay, so Bialogowski introduced Petrov to a senior ASI officer, Ron Richards, who was born in Nottingham, England, and then moved to Australia at age 21 and joined the Western Australian Police in 1928. I couldn't find anything interesting about Ron Richards. There was no scandals. There was no raping. There was no
maybe that's just
conducting.
because he was a good guy that did his job.
He does seem like, from what I could find, was like a very heroic, like, police man that like did his job well and worked for years in intelligence. He married an older lady. He lost a child, a baby, you know.
I mean, did he lose the baby, or did the baby die like of a disease
baby
or something?
died,
Or
yeah,
did he misplace the baby?
No, it just died of a disease or something.
Okay,
It
well, I
died
mean,
as an infant.
Australia's chock full of poison.
Yes, chock
You know,
full
like-
of nuts too.
Yeah, I don't know about
And
that,
and
but like
and
crazy
Nutella.
nuts.
Isn't chock or Nutella's delicious?
Not
What else?
Nutella. What is Vegemite? Vegemite. Isn't it that stuff
Vegemite.
they-
Vegemite is terrible. I'll tell you. Have you guys ever had Vegemite?
I have never
not.
had
It looks
Vegemite.
disgusting.
The only reason I had Vegemite is because my daughter, the cool thing about the local elementary school my kids go to is they have a teacher exchange program
Huh.
where every couple years there's a teacher from another country that shows up, and
That's pretty cool.
it's just, you don't know who's going to get the kid or get the teacher. But my daughter they had Mrs. Beveridge before from Scotland, and then that Miss Beveridge. And then
Beverage is great.
None of my
Was she
kids.
cold? What you hot?
She was actually, I will say, at risk of sounding like a creep, she was cute. She was pretty, I
Okay.
think. But none of my kids got her.
So you would say that she was a hot beverage.
She was a tasty beverage. Oh, that sounds even.
Oh, that
Oh,
sounds
oh,
worse.
oh,
than-
No, she-
Joe,
yeah.
That sounds
oh.
worse than pretty, I think.
Icy. No, that's awful. No,
That's
anyway,
just-
she was a very attractive young woman that probably was very nice to people. But my kids never got her. They all wanted to be in her class, and they did. But then my daughter got to be in the next exchange teacher. It was Mr. Bridge. It's almost like they're fake names, Miss
Right.
Beveridge and Mr. Bridge.
Well, I mean, they could be because fuck Americans. You know, they don't.
Right.
You know.
Maybe it's some kind of underground secret spy program.
Or they
Maybe
could be
it
part of
is.
OSI. What is
Maybe
it?
they're-
OSI?
maybe they're-
ASIO.
ASIO. What is OSI? OSI is some other clandestine organization.
But this one,
OSI reminds me of the Venture Brothers.
oh,
Maybe
I
that's
started
that guy.
watching that. You
Venture
told me to
Brothers
watch
is
that.
genius.
Yeah, on Gruff and Loud, you told me to watch that, so I started watching it. It's very,
Oh.
very good. Anyway, so Mr. Bridge is from Australia, and my daughter got to have him, and he gave all the kids at the end of the school year. He gave them all a little bit of Vegemite as like a. It was great to have you. Here's my Australian heritage, and it was. So I got to try it, and it was terrible.
I have not heard anything good about Vegemite.
Yeah, I have not either.
It looks like Nutella, so you're expecting that
Right.
flavor.
Well, see,
Right.
maybe that's why it's horrible. It's because you're expecting Nutella.
Yeah. If I'm sure
mean-
if I was starving in a desert and I had nothing else, I would love Vegemite.
Yeah. If you're stuck in the fucking outback,
And if you grew up
you
with
had
it,
water and Vegemite, you'll be like, thank fucking God for this water and Vegemite.
anyway, so this Ron Richards guy, who was a senior ASIO officer who was born in England but moved to Australia at 21 and joined the Australian police, he offered Petrov asylum plus $5,000 or pounds in exchange for all the documents he could bring with him from the embassy. Planning for Petrov's defection was codenamed Operation Cabin 12 after a briefer period of being designated Operation Cabin 11, following a standard practice of referring to potential defectors as cabin candidates. Petrov defected on this day, April 3rd, 1954, officially. And there's a little bit more on this that happens later in the month. So we'll put this aside for now.
Okay.
To be concluded.
To be continued in the rest of later in this episode.
Just listening to this story,
Yeah.
like I was just thinking, I was like, I'm wondering how much of stuff like this happens today in countries. Like you see it in pop culture, like on television shows, but how much is it really like, down the street, your next door neighbor is like in the CIA or something? Like how much of that is, real nowadays?
And here's something. If someone told you that they worked with or for, would you believe them or be like, no, fuck them. They're full of shit.
Right. Right. It's like,
that dude's just fucking talking shit.
Right. He's an analyst. What the fuck is he talking about?
There was a guy in my neighborhood a few years back. I'll never forget this. I could be remembering this wrong because it doesn't seem like you would say this to somebody, but he was so I live in this neighborhood that's like a circle and it's right behind my elementary school and there's a trail that goes to the school. So I was the only person in the whole neighborhood that walked their kids. So every day I walked the two kids and pretty soon other parents would be like, hey, you walk the kids to school? Can my kids go with you? Sure. And so I would walk there. And so I was
Joe's just leading a bunch of kids.
Joe was team leader.
I did, and then I would take my dogs at the same time. So I had like my dogs and like 4 kids, 5 kids behind me, kids of all races and nationalities.
That's
So
wonderful.
it's just like this whole like
creepy ass Pied Piper.
But there was one other guy that started walking too, and I was like, well, this is weird. And then like we're like, I'm right behind you, and like you're right in front of me. Like so, then we just started kind of walking together. He was a big, heavy guy, and he had just little tiny girls, like. They must have been like preschool or something at the school because he only went there a couple of days. And we started talking. I don't know how we got to talking about what you do for a living, but he said, yeah, I'm a spy. I was in Italy for a couple of years and I was just I thought he said it was Russia or something, but so now I'm here for a while, but I'll have to go back in a year or two. But I was like, should you be telling me that? I was like,
you're like, okay.
Yeah, well, that's
Am I going to get shot now because I know this?
Yeah, I was kind of like, I don't know.
Is there a line you shouldn't cross so you don't have to? This is a couple of these kids are mine.
Here's the thing, Joe. You're like the type of guy that if someone doesn't even know you, they just want to walk up to you and befriend you because you look like you're a good time, Joe.
You look like a good guy. Hey, I'm a spy. But the guy's gone. Like he moved. I saw him like maybe 3 or 4 times that semester or whatever it was. And this was a couple years ago. And I've never seen him again. I know somebody else that lives in that house now because.
Or he could just be crazy. He could have just been crazy.
Maybe he was
just be like, and then you're like, yeah, I'm a spy.
It could have been like, I'm here for a couple of years before me and my kids are fucking off. I'm just gonna fuck with everyone.
I know there's a small chance that was a dream I had. But the guy, I think the guy exists, but I was tired around that time. I wasn't getting a lot of sleep, so maybe it was a dream. But I think that's what he said. It
was when you were watching Burn Notice and Sopranos.
It was early in the morning.
You're just having this weird James Gandolfini, Michael Weston combo character.
It was very early in the morning, so maybe I misheard him. Maybe he said he was something else. Maybe he said he was a fry cook.
Right.
Could have been.
I don't know.
Could have said he was a fry cook that was learning different techniques around the world. Yeah.
I think that's what he said. But I've told my wife, she doesn't believe me. Like everything's I'm making it up. Maybe I am making it up. I don't know.
Does the house exist? No,
the house is still there.
You said someone else's.
But I haven't seen that guy in it. I haven't seen anybody really in it. I've seen a couple people in it, but not. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean,
there's a lot of. I'm in like a transitional neighborhood. I think. Like I'm.
You're in a nice, quiet, tucked away neighborhood,
and it's affordable.
That's just close enough and just far enough away.
Yeah, I live in a neighborhood that's like moderately priced housing in an area where it's either all around me is either tiny shacks and mobile homes or like mansions.
Yeah,
neighborhoods of mansions, or it's like
neighborhoods
very rich,
that are the
very,
people
very
that work in those mansions.
Yeah.
That can't afford the fucking gas to live.
But
far
mine is
away.
like the
Right.
only neighborhood where normal people can afford.
No,
it.
your
Very
neighborhood
odd.
is very nice.
I got that. I got that. I got a sense of that. Just when we was on our way up there, I was like, I was telling TBJ, I was like, man, it looks like every area seemed like a different world. Like it's like this looks different. Like wow, look at that yard, and then it's like, oh, look at this. But then there's like, was it a Walgreens? Just like everything just seemed. It seemed like almost like West Street on WandaVision. It was almost like this area was just made. Like literally was just made.
Yeah, well,
it was like one of those definite. I've seen this before in my
Right.
dreams.
Right.
It's like a made up. It's like a fake
it's
neighborhood.
beautiful, dude.
It
I
doesn't-
remember
yeah.
when you said I found a neighborhood where my kids can play until the streetlights come on, and you sent me a picture. I was like, "Fuck you!" That's like from Big.
Well, and
Right.
all
You sent
the
you a screenshot.
all
Yeah,
the electrical
television show,
lines
movie.
are buried, so it's beautiful. And there's hills, and there's trees, and the kids did like when we moved here. They just went outside and rode bikes with other kids and came home when it was dark, like the old days. It's like this tucked away. It is like WandaVision town,
Yeah,
but
I love the fact that they buried the wires. That's fucking genius.
it's awesome. But because
We
it's
should have
this
been
middle,
doing that for fucking decades.
it's this affordable middle class neighborhood. I
It's a little
feel like
enclave.
everybody here is either on their way up or on their way down. So we get people that have like, oh, I had it all and I'm broke and I have to live here. Or people are like, I've been broke my whole life, but I finally got enough money to live here. And it's like this like middle ground of like,
Hey, dude, I feel bad for people that are broke and live there. That's I'm broke now. It's like fuck you, buddy.
well, yeah, we had
I like me and my friends used to drive over here to go trick or treating.
well, that's it. Most of the people that live here drive to richer neighborhoods to trick or treat, and then the poorer people come to this neighborhood to trick or treat.
That's nice.
So it's like this weird, like
It's a
Yeah,
trickle
no,
down.
that's-
It's a trickle up.
it's a
Trickle up, trick or treat.
yeah, no, that's
And there's some people that just go to every neighborhood. But anyway, but we don't
Good for
have, I
them.
mean, this isn't the kind of neighborhood where they hand out full candy bars.
Right.
That's where my kids
no, that's
go.
where the other kids go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where they go. Yeah. So, all right. Anyway,
Your neighborhood
back-
hands a box of raisins.
I hand
Every
out
now and
hugs.
then get an apple and an orange.
Right.
All right.
A pencil.
Back to a pencil. Oh, I hated it when I got a pencil. You'd get like a Halloween pencil. Like, I don't want a fucking
Right.
pencil.
Right.
It is in
A
the
Halloween-
store.
A Halloween pencil and an orange.
Oh, I hated that fucking pencil. All right. Okay. We got another birthday. April 7th.
Amy hates birthdays. Amy hates birthdays.
April 7th, 1954. Receive. You can guess who this is. Just shout it out when you know who this is. All right. And think
Bill
about
Bixby.
Toscanini.
yeah, you're not gonna wait for any clues, just gonna guess birthdays. Who did you guys already guess?
I said Bill Bixby.
Okay, so think about it. This person was born April 7th, 1954. So think of the age they are now. They're like almost 70. They'll be 70 in 2024. All right. So this person was born in Hong Kong as Chan
Jackie
Kong
Chan.
Sang. Whoa!
Jackie.
Jackie Chan it is.
Nice.
He was born Chan Kong Sang to Charles and Li Chan, refugees from the Chinese Civil War. His parents were so poor they had to borrow money from friends to pay the doctor.
Damn.
His parents nicknamed him Pow Pow because the energetic child was always rolling around. His parents worked for the French ambassador in Hong Kong. In 1960, his father emigrated to Canberra, Australia.
Hey.
What are the chances of talking about Canberra, Australia twice in 1 month? To work as the head cook for the American embassy, and Chan was sent to the China Drama Academy, a Peking opera school run by Master Yu Jim Yuen. Chan
Nice.
trains
That's
rigorously for the next decade, excelling in martial arts and acrobatics. He eventually became part of the Seven Little Fortunes, a performance group made up of the school's best students, gaining the stage name Yuen Lo in homage to his master. Chan then joined his parents in Canberra, Australia in 1976, where he briefly attended Dixon College. Notable alumni include Garth Nix, author of young adult fantasy novels, and he worked as a construction worker. A fellow builder named Jack took Chan under his wing, thus earning Chan the nickname of Little Jack, later shortened to Jackie, which has stuck with him ever since. That's how he got Jackie Chan.
Pretty awesome.
How about that?
Yeah.
Was that exciting to know?
No,
That
that's
was very
exciting. I didn't know most of that about Jackie Chan. Well done, Art. Even better.
All right.
You got it so quick out the gate.
Yeah, dude. That was like,
I think both of you guys, one thing you guys probably have in common is I think you guys both like Kung Fu movies.
I do enjoy Kung Fu movies.
Yeah. You don't like Kung Fu movies, Joe?
I do, but I'm not like not as much as you two.
No, he had to deal with me a lot. I've been a fan of Bruce Lee. Every Bruce Lee to Jean-Claude Van Damme, I don't give a fuck. You know?
Right. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Jet Li.
Kicks and punches, I'm in.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Then we're going to move to April 8th. We got a lot to cover, and I'm just going real slow here. With you guys. April 8th, 1954. I'll burn through this one fast. A Trans-Canada Airlines Flight 9, a Canadair C4 North Star 4-engine commercial prop liner on a domestic regular scheduled flight, collided in midair with a Royal Canadian Air Force Harvard Mark II single-engine military trainer on a cross-country navigation exercise over Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. Both aircraft crashed. A large section of the C4 North Star fell on a home in the suburbs of Moose Jaw and killed the one occupant of that home. And the Harvard came down on a golf course. All 35 people in the airliner were killed, as was the lone occupant of the trainer and the one person that was in their house. Investigators later stated the most likely cause of the accident was the failure of both pilots to see and avoid each other.
Wow. Safe bet. That's a safe bet.
I think probably crashed.
I bet they didn't see each other. That's probably why they didn't avoid each other.
Well, have you guys ever heard of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan?
I want to say I have.
When you said Moose Jaw, I immediately thought of Welcome to Mooseport.
I thought of the Ray Romano thing, and then I was like, no, maybe Dudley Do Right. You know?
Right. Okay.
Maybe some Dudley Do Right thing or Northern Exposure.
Oh yeah, that I was getting a Northern Exposure vibe, or what was that show? Twin Peaks, like that kind of.
I thought I didn't think Twin Peaks was cold enough to be Canadian.
Maybe not. Fargo, maybe. Anyway,
Fargo was
this accident was
North Dakota. Yeah,
this was a catalyst.
In Minnesota.
Minnesota. This accident was a catalyst for changes in aviation practices in the airspace near Moose Jaw.
Good.
A new regulation was implemented requiring aircraft flying in opposite directions to maintain separate altitudes. Sounds like
that would make sense, right?
Yeah, I know that's a good idea.
How about we not, fly head on to each other? Like,
how about everyone going west stay at this height, and everyone going east stay around here? Just try it for a bit.
A little bit about Moose Jaw. Their residents are called Moose Javians.
Moose Javians, and notable people from Moose Jaw include Art Linkletter.
Ooh. Oh, Art. Good old Art Linkletter.
Yeah.
Art Linkletter. He was abandoned when only a few weeks old in Moose Jaw, and he was adopted by Marion Fulton John Linkletter and an evangelical preacher, then later moved to San Diego when he was little. But he's originally from Moose Jaw.
Nice. Another Canadian bringing smiles and joy to America.
That's right.
What the fuck, man?
Just like Michael J. Fox.
Yeah, and John Candy.
John Candy and Martin Short.
Yep.
Ryan Reynolds.
Letterkenny.
To be fair.
Amy hates birthdays. Amy hates birthdays.
All right, Friday, April 9th, we got another birthday. Born in Houston.
Another birthday.
This guy was born in Houston, Texas. See if you can guess who it is. The son of Juanita B. Nita, and a real estate agent, and William Rudy, an electrician. He attended Paul W. Horn Elementary School in Bel Air and Pershing Middle School in Houston. He studied Mandarin and dance at Bel Air High School in Bel Air, Texas. Their team colors are red and white, home of the Cardinals. Notable alumni at this school include Chuck Knobloch and Cindy Pickett,
I know Chuck Knobloch.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
And
know
I
him.
don't know Cindy Picken.
She played the mom in Ferris Bueller.
Oh, well, all right.
And later, this gentleman's whose last name is Quaid dropped out of the University of
Randy.
Dennis Quaid.
Oh, it's Dennis.
It was one of them.
He dropped out of the
One of those
University
Quaid boys.
of Houston before graduating and moved to Hollywood to pursue an
I didn't know he
acting career.
So he studied Mandarin.
Yeah, apparently.
That's
And
to me.
dance.
That's an interesting fact.
Yeah.
Mandarin and dance at Bel Air High School
Nice.
in Texas. Yeah.
You know, Texas.
Yeah, and actually, he dropped out of the University of Houston, and moved to Hollywood to pursue an acting career. And he initially had trouble finding work, but began to gain notice when he appeared in Breaking Away and earned good reviews for his role as astronaut Gordon Cooper in The Right Stuff. That's what I should have said instead of saying his name, Quaid, to see if you could guess it. But I failed.
I probably wouldn't have been able to.
Either.
Yeah.
I
I
definitely wouldn't
completely
do that.
forgot he was in Right Stuff.
Yeah, I want to see those movies now because Dennis Quaid is. Would I say he's the normal Quaid?
By comparison, yeah.
April 12th, 1954. Sorry.
No.
It was the 8th NBA championship. The Minneapolis Lakers beat the Syracuse Nationals 4-3. That same day, Bill Haley and the Comets recorded Rock Around the Clock.
Nice.
Talk about historic.
Well, I mean, it wasn't the 11th.
Well, these guys were booked into the Pythian Temple Studio, a converted Masonic temple in downtown New York, to record 2 songs, 13 Women and Rock Around the Clock. That afternoon, the band got stranded in the Delaware River when their ferry ran aground. They arrived at the studio hours late with time running out. Milt Gabler had a stake in the publishing of 13 Women, so he spent most of the session on it instead of Rock Around the Clock. 2 takes were cut on the B-side, with Haley shouting out his vocal above the raucous joy of the band. Comets bass player Marshall Lytle recalled in Haley's bio, "We spent 2.5 hours on the A-side, 13 Women, and 30 minutes on the B-side. And in 30 minutes, we came up with what is now the anthem of rock and roll."
Oh yeah.
So how about that?
No, it's
And the same day that was recorded, April 12th, Joe Turner released Shake, Rattle, and Roll, an Atlantic
Shake,
Records song.
Rattle, and Roll.
Yeah, that's the
Shake,
first time that
rattle,
was.
and roll.
Yep.
Oh, honky tonk man.
An Atlantic Records songwriter producer named Jesse Stone, under the name Charles Calhoun, wrote that specifically for Big Joe Turner in his New York recording session. Big Joe preferred recording on the road. This was his first Big Apple session in 18 months. So Shake, Rattle, and Roll, just so you know, was a favorite saying in Stone's weekly poker game. And while the song is ostensibly about dancing and having a good time, there are a lot of sexual overtones, especially in these lyrics, which maybe you guys can tell me what the sexual part is of this. One-eyed cat peeping in a seafood store. Stone's drummer Baby Lovett provided that line. What is one-eyed cat peeping in a seafood store? What does that mean?
I'm assuming the seafood store is the woman's nether region. The one-eyed cat
Is your
would
wiener?
be the dude.
And so peeping?
Just kind of looking around.
You know,
Looking
seeing
in.
what's going on in there. You know,
Yeah. One-eyed cat creeping around
looking
the
for
fish
a little
store.
snapper, maybe.
Do you think
Maybe
you
a
guys,
little tuna.
Yeah. I think
how do you
Art's
think,
talking truth.
do you guys think it'll go over well if the next time you guys have sexual intercourse, you refer to it with your partner as one-eyed cat peeping?
No, I don't think
in
it.
the,
No, not right. No. I mean, I think the best thing that would
Food
happen
store?
would be getting a what and a laugh.
or calling it a seafood store right before you get to
I'm going down to Arthur Treaches.
do not
I don't
say
think
that.
that'll work.
Do not say that.
No,
Never
no.
refer that to. Never.
I don't think you should
refer
refer to a woman as a
Arthur
defunct.
Treachers. Don't
Uh,
refer to it as Arthur Treachers.
No.
All right.
Nor Long John Silver's. I think that's just all wrong.
All right, here we go. Another birthday. Another birthday. I'm going to do better about not revealing the name. April 17th,
You did fine the last time.
1954. Who was born on this day?
Pee Wee Herman. Paul Rubin.
Roderick George Toombs was born in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
What's up with Canada? You got a lot of these Canadian birthdays.
I know it is Canadian.
Was it Piper?
Ah, yes, the son of Eileen and Stanley Baird Toombs. He was raised in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and attended Windsor Park Collegiate. Their colors were purple and silver, home of the Royals. Yes, his best friend, notable alumni of that school, is Cam Connor, a professional NHL hockey player. His father was an officer with the CN Rail Police, the Canadian National Railway. After being expelled from junior high for having a switchblade in school and falling out with his father, Toombs left home and stayed in youth hostels.
I should have known it because I last year I watched that the documentary that they did on.
You didn't remember the name Toombs. He picked up odd jobs at local gyms, running errands for several professional wrestlers. As a young man, he became proficient in playing the bagpipes, though he repeatedly stated he was unaware exactly where he picked them up. He soon began earning money wrestling while still going to school. His first match in a famous organization was with Larry Hennig and the AWA. Friends of his played the bagpipes during his entrance while he was handing out dandelions. Meanwhile, the ring announcer had to announce something, but all he knew was that his name was Roddy. Subsequently, after seeing the pipe band, he announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, here comes Roddy the Piper." This gave birth to the name Roddy Piper. That's how he got his name.
Pretty awesome.
That's pretty cool. Roddy Piper, baby.
Yeah. Another Canadian that brought joy to America.
Yeah. I mean,
God bless him, Canada.
What a great career he had, right? I mean,
right.
You guys, big Piper. I mean, Steve Piper was your favorite guy, right?
Well, he was one of my favorite guys. Yeah. No, like I had a moral conundrum with that whole Jimmy Snuka thing because those were my two favorite wrestlers.
Oh yeah.
I thought I had beat the system because they didn't have any conflict, and then they fucking did, and then it was just like, God damn it.
Yep. Routed. And then They Live is the greatest movie of all time.
It is one of the best movies.
And now we're
it's unless you can start comparing it to other John Carpenter movies, and then they're just all good. But that's just my opinion.
Well, let's jump back. We're at April 19th, 1954. We're getting close to you guys taking over. But before that, we're going to jump back to the Petrov Affair. So Petrov, who was defecting, he decided to defect earlier in April. He never told his wife, Evdokia Petrova, of his intentions. Apparently, he planned to defect without her.
Wow.
So after falsely claiming that Australian authorities had kidnapped Petrov, the MVD sent 2 couriers to Australia to fetch Evdokia, his wife. Word of this leaked out, and on April 19th, there were violent anti-communist demonstrations at the Sydney airport as Evdokia Petrova was escorted by the KGB men to the aircraft. Evdokia. I'm trying to see if I'm saying that right. Anyway, on the plane, on radioed instructions from Prime Minister Robert Menzies, a flight attendant asked her, again, Menzies is an unfortunate name. A flight attendant asked her if she was happy being escorted back to the USSR, but she did not give a clear answer, and she was racked with indecision. Defection could have severe consequences for her family in the USSR. So, she's assuming her family's going to be killed if she defects. So she's not sure what to do. Menzies decided that he could not allow her to be removed in this way. And when the aircraft stopped for refueling at Darwin Airport, she was seized from the MVD men by ASIO officials. In order to separate Petrova from MVD, the ASIO officials confronted them on the grounds that they were carrying arms, which it was illegal to do on an aircraft at that time. The ASIO officials ordered Petrova asylum, which she accepted after speaking to her husband by phone. And by now, it was the early hours of April 20th, 1954. Anyway, it became national news, and these photos are famous, and older people probably remember this. The photos of Evdokia Petrova being rough handled by KGB agents at Sydney Airport and her agonized last-moment decision to defect with her husband made at Darwin Airport have become iconic Australian images of the 1950s. So I'm guessing any old Australians know all about this.
I would assume anyone in AC/DC would have a good chance of remembering this.
And Men at Work.
Maybe not Brian Johnson.
Colin Hay definitely knows this.
Yeah, no, Colin Hay would.
So this affair grew more dramatic when Menzies told the House of Representatives that Petrov had brought with him documents concerning Soviet espionage in Australia. He announced that a royal commission would investigate the matter, and they called it the Royal Commission on Espionage. Petrov's documents were shown to the commission members, though they were never made public. The documents were alleged to provide evidence of an extensive Soviet spy ring in Australia. But in the aftermath, as a result of the defections, the Australian embassy in Moscow was expelled, and the USSR embassy in Canberra was recalled. Diplomatic relations were not reestablished until March 13th, 1959. There were some political repercussions. There was some back and forth about whether or not Menzies was doing this because there was an election coming up between the Labour Party and the Liberal Party and things like that. This was all just a hoax. But according to some, as a result of the Petrov affair, Menzies was successful at the election, which the Labour Party had been widely expected to win. He was in the Liberal Party. The Royal Commission continued for the rest of 54 and uncovered some evidence of espionage for the Soviet Union by some members and supporters of the Communist Party of Australia during and immediately after World War II, but no one was ever charged with an offense as a result of the Commission's work, and no major spy ring was uncovered. The Petrovs, having been given political asylum, were eventually settled in suburban Melbourne under the names Sven and Maria Allison and given a pension.
Sven.
Yes,
And
Sven.
Maria Alice.
And that's where they got the name Sven in Voltron.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Is that why Sven disappeared and came back when he was fighting with the revolution?
It could have been inspired
Because
by
he was
this.
based on Petrov? I didn't realize there was such a heavy
That
Australian
connection.
connection
Yeah.
to the American
Right.
translation of that goat lion Voltron.
But
That's
this
fucking dope, dude.
is going to bring us to April 21st when George Melenkov became the premier of USSR. And you guys have something to say about a congressional subcommittee began a 3-day
okay.
televised investigation of the causes of
Shit.
juvenile delinquency. Let me get, I need to, all the technical difficulties we had made me drink my Moscow Mule. I have to get another
You had to get out a drink.
Oh, please do.
But go ahead and start.
Okay. As Joe was saying, the United States Subcommittee on the Juvenile Delinquency held a trial at Foley Square. This subcommittee was established as a unit of the Judiciary Committee by a motion from Senator Robert Hendrickson, a Republican from New Jersey, with a budget of $44,000, approximately $429,246 today. The first on board was Senator Estes Kefeve, a Democrat from Tennessee, followed by Thomas C. Hennings Jr., a Democrat from Missouri. William Langer, a Republican from North Dakota, rounded out the committee.
Okay.
Senator Kefefe, that's not really how you pronounce it.
Isn't Kofefe?
It's
Isn't
not.
that the thing
I was
Trump-
really
Trump
hoping
tweeted?
that it was Kefefe, but it's not pronounced that way. It's Kefefe. I can't. It's a silly pronunciation that I'll just slaughter every time, which is how I got the saying Kefefe. Anyway, Senator Estes from the good Senator Estes from Tennessee replaced Senator Hendrickson from New Jersey as the chair at the time of the broadcast.
Okay.
The first day of 3 of the televised hearings on the potential impact of comic books, particularly the ones of crime and horror and suspense, due to their graphic nature, had a negative effect on their audience of juveniles and potentially led to the path of delinquency.
Okay, wait a minute. This is where this makes a little more sense to me because I was thinking this whole time they were just upset at superhero comics. I forgot
superhero comics had nothing.
Well,
There were
superhero
very
comics,
few.
yeah, but it didn't have it. But they still had like certain things that, and I guess y'all still got to think about the time that they were in, where highly misogynistic. Very racial. Everything was, pro. I don't want to say pro man.
It was pro white guy.
Pro white guy.
Yeah, it was pro white guy.
So you had a lot of issues brought up, by certain people. Like a lot, like at the same time this inquiry was happening. Like there's this book that came out called "Seduction of the Innocent."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this a book or a comic?
It's a book. It was done by this German American named Dr. Frederick Wertham, I guess, or whatever. And but like this guy, he was like it's weird because this guy was a positive guy. He did so much for racial equality. He had a lot to do with like Brown versus Board of Education. But like he also felt that like comic books contributed to the delinquency of kids. And like even when they had him on like the panel or whatever, he was referencing kids that were at this it wasn't a halfway house. It was kind of like a reform house for juvenile delinquents.
Yeah, it was before you had juvenile jail, before you had juvie. But you sent them to reform schools and shit.
Right. So basically, like all of the kids that he was getting his information from were kids who were, kids that he had been around who already had underlying issues. But it was just like they made a scene. But it was also just like, like growing up, even before that, when you had like Westerns, where you had like dime store novels, things like that. Like this is where like the kids of those days learned about, like, you didn't want the kids to read the newspaper because there was too much going on in the world for them to actually read the newspaper. So you ended up having like what my dad calls the funny papers, where they get to read like, the comics of the comics
and Jammer kids.
The comics were supposed to be like things that make the kids just happy and think about super happy things.
Yeah.
But like the stuff that came out of this inquiry, like I was telling Steve right before we started, like how I went and I actually found the entire code and like the writing in this code. I'm like, even like, let's say if the book was about crime, like you could put crime on the book, but crime had to be really small. Like it's almost like you was trying to hide the word crime, but I guess they felt like kids wasn't smart enough. Like if a kid see like, oh, something fun, like, oh, the big red balloon, it would have to be like, let's say if the red balloon was something that killed people. It could be like, it could be called Crime of the Big Red Balloon, but the big red balloon had to be ginormous and crime had to be so small that the kid's attention span would like immediately jump to, oh, it's a red balloon. It's okay for them to read kind of thing. Right.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's crazy.
It's pretty impressive how easily parents then felt kids were swayed. It's one of those things that I think we see repeated in different ways in every generation. It's before we blame D&D for getting kids to the Satan, we said it was rock and roll. After D&D, we said it was heavy metal.
Now it's video games.
Now it's video games. But like even like this
video
dude,
games.
So my thing is like this dude is a psychiatrist. Like you're sitting there, you're supposed to be helping these kids out, but you already like this guy, this Dr. Wertham. He claimed that Wonder Woman, strength and independence made her a lesbian because she was a woman. She was a lesbian. Yeah. Like this is the guy who was sitting there saying it wasn't okay for kids to read comic books. This guy. But then like I say, this guy did so much for the people. And yes, for him to be so simple-minded when it comes to
stuff,
like comic books.
I think
like he has like that one little, it's like a fucking blind spot.
Yeah,
you know?
That's the thing that I think makes history so difficult is that we want everything to be so neat and clean and easy, and there people are good or people are bad, and that's it. But people are not like that.
No,
people are complex.
The only things that are binary are computers. You know, computers deal with zeros and ones. The rest of us use imaginary numbers.
Like you can have people that are like, you know, civil rights leaders, but they're homophobic. You know,
right.
And you can have, you know, like LGBTQ activists that are racist. It's like, wait a minute, like what?
Exactly.
You know, it's like that's the difficulty. Is like you read about somebody who did some great things. They were amazing. I mean, our founding fathers are the perfect example. It's like they built this country. They built all this great things, and it's the experiment, the democracy, but they fucking raped. It's crazy what you know, but that's just what the world is in society. But this is interesting to me. So this commission, I got a lot of questions about this, but like I feel like there's a common thread here, and I'm just kind of spitballing here, but I'm thinking everyone blames the thing. It feels like to me, like with the comic books and with video games, it's like these kids that you said, Art, were already in halfway houses, already troubled.
Well, even I've started reading a little bit of the book. Yeah. You know, you can find the book is.
Seduction of the Innocent.
Yeah, it's in public domain.
Yeah.
But it's just like, you know, he made mentions of like this one kid who was like, I don't want to say he was fucked in the head, but for all intents and purposes, he was already fucked in the head. But then like his parent kind of like forbade him from having guns in the house or whatever. He was a kid; he should have a gun anyway. But like but the kid ended up having a gun up on like a roof, and he killed some dude at the polo grounds, and it was like, but then he also said he frequently read comic books about crime, and that's what made him want to sit there and, you know, get a gun because it seemed kind of cool, and killed this guy at the polo ground.
Because these crime comics normalize this behavior,
and this is I almost feel like Andy should have been on this one too, because I know Andy would have had so much. Just dealing with like the history of like comic books. But like, you know, there was so many comic houses that fell because of this.
Where
it was like
80% of the industry,
like
just
like Mad Magazine ended up the
Mad Magazine was what saved that man. Like he was the one that testified in the trial. The publisher of Mad.
Yeah, so like his comic house went under, but he just said, "Okay,
EC Comics.
I can't do this. Let me just go ahead." And you know that made Matt. I mean, it was kind of a good thing for him, but there were other comic houses that had
those, like EC Comics. The guy you're talking about, William Gaines,
right?
Gaines, like that dude. EC Comics had the Crypt of Horror, the fucking. What was it?
Well, see,
Tomb of Horror and Tales in the Crypt.
I have the entire comics code right here.
Wait. Before we get to that,
54 criteria is ridiculous.
Can we back up? Like we jumped so far into this pool already, and can we back up just a little bit to help understand how this started? Like, do you have like the origins of this hearing? Like, is it this guy who wrote this book started this whole thing?
Well, it was the senator. The senator that started the committee was reading the book.
So
and not directly,
directly.
I read this book and I see there's a problem, but it was like most Senate subcommittees now, as in then, were kind of looking for things to do.
Okay.
And there was a rise in juvenile delinquency. So they're like, we need to do a study of why these kids are doing shit. Because it can't be because their parents don't pay attention. Can't be because they're fucking broke. Can't be all these societal reasons. It has to be some clear-cut influence. It must be all these crime, suspense, and horror comics that are extremely graphic.
Well, that's what I'm feeling like. It's like the common thread with all this. Like, these are kids who haven't rough. Like they have a rough life and they're trying to escape. Like what comics and everything is, it's escapism. It's like, I want to forget about my troubled, awful life.
But society at this time didn't feel as though that the material that was being put out by these comic houses was the escapism that these kids needed because these kids couldn't tell the difference between. They didn't have a grasp on what between right and wrong enough to have someone other than their parents tell them that what you're reading isn't real.
Right.
Well, some of the stuff was based on real cases, but the fact that like they were being depicted for kids' pleasure, as opposed to like nowadays, you have Andy mentioned in our last episode about how like there's a Batman comic where there's like basically full frontal back nudity.
Oh yeah,
he's talking about the last episode of Nerd School.
Right, last episode. So it's like one of those things where back then it was back then comic books was viewed as something that only kids read.
Oh yeah, so comic writers didn't admit that they wrote comic books. They didn't want to be associated with it because that shit literally was for kids. They didn't,
Right.
Yeah.
So when you end up having, let's say there's like imagery in these books where like women are, overly exaggerated sexually, or like there's like, for the most part,
beheadings and blood and murder scenes.
Like people getting pummeled and scenes of sex. It's like kids shouldn't be reading this kind of thing. But then, because of the kids are reading these kinds of things, they're taking these things for like, oh, this is the way things should be. Let me go out here and do these things. And that's what this committee thought.
Saying kids, though, is like such a wide range. Like, I mean, there's 17-year-olds could be considered kids.
Well, and this is the 1950s, so kids were probably 14 and under.
Yeah.
But even then, in those times, like, like we all have like grandparents, older parents or whatever. And it's like, in those times, sometimes 14-year-olds, like let's say in the 20s, 14-year-olds were getting married and having families of their own kind of thing. And it's like, sure, the kids, as they got older and like time fly, you would think, okay, well, a 14-year-old in the 50s is not the same as a 14-year-old in the 20s.
Like each generation, parents have extended the childhood,
right?
Accepted childhood.
But then, like, I guess to the government, that hadn't been adapted into the world of comic books, where these comics were being written, but they weren't necessarily being written for kids because
we're talking about a very small percentage of comics, because we got to remember this is also the time of Popeye. This is also the time of Archie. This is also the time of romance and Western comics. Donald Duck. This is also, this is getting the beginnings of Disney comics and things of that sort. But you're very much right. There was a level of graphic, just blood and gore in the horror comics, that they already, before the creation of the comic code, editors did try to rein in, but it was because of these trials, because of these hearings and the negative press from the
but then it's also one of the things where a lot of things also was when it came to kids, like this psychiatrist, he was a part of the defense for Albert fucking Fish. Okay? Albert fucking Fish. If you don't know who Albert fucking Fish was, this motherfucker was a fucking cannibalistic pedophile. And yet here he was
defending this motherfucker.
Defending his motherfucker. Yeah. But when it came to kids,
cannibal.
Yeah. When it came to kids, it was you can't read this shit.
Yeah, no. It was really a beginning of the movement of, I think, over precious-ing children. We really started putting them on a pedestal because America as a country has always used children as a shield, an excuse, and a defense. We hide behind children to justify our behavior. And we also put down, like, we put them as the reason why we do a lot of shit that doesn't need to be done. And they often don't fucking win in the long run anyway.
So, all right. So these trials started, and so what exactly happened?
Nothing. Nothing
really happened.
All that really happened is that there was 3 days of some negative impact, marketing for comics that destroyed that.
Well, what ended up happening was
industry.
But was there like? I was going to just ask: did some of these comic book people, writers, and authors, and ink guys, and did they get on the stand and be like, "Hey"?
No.
Well, there was one that got on that basically fucked his. Like he was kind of out of it, and he kind of helped their cause a little bit.
Oh.
Well, they lawyered his ass because he thought he was being witty. He was the guy behind Mad gets some
Gaines. Yeah, it was Gaines. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Gaines. William Gaines.
Yep.
Oh, William Gaines. So Mad Magazine guy.
Yeah. Before Mad Magazine, like
that was being attacked too,
Comics.
Mad Magazine?
Yeah, it was the same guy.
Well, listen. Okay, so I found some of his testimony.
Oh.
Yeah.
Let's see
what
impression
of the guy.
I can't do it. I don't know what it sounds like.
You know exactly what he sounds like.
You can assume what he sounds like in 1954, can't you?
Okay, so it says. So it was like let me start. So Gaines originally had been scheduled to appear in the morning, but other witnesses apparently ran on longer than expected, pushing Gaines' testimony until after the lunch. After the committee reconvened, however, Wortham appeared to testify, and the committee moved him ahead of Gaines. Gaines later contended that the postponement of his appearance adversely affected his testimony. According to his biographer, Gaines was taking diet pills, and the medication began to wear off. Fatigue set in. Gaines recalled at the beginning, I felt I was really going to fix those bastards. But as time went on, I could feel myself fading away. They were pelting me with questions, and I couldn't locate the answers. The young publisher unwisely chose to testify of his own volition and had the poor fortune to approach the stand with flagging energy to face the hostile interrogation of senators who had just respectfully heard Dickbag Wortham indictment of comics, and who was rankled by his Red Duke cartoon, which I think I looked up Red Duke, but it was something he did where he shouldn't have done, and it kind of like it worked against him. Okay. Although the cards were stacked against him, Gaines took the stand with an air of defiance. In the first moments of his testimony, he declared, I was the first publisher in these United States to publish horror comics. I am responsible. I started them. Some may not like them. That is a matter of personal taste. It would be just as difficult to explain the harmless thrill of a horror story to a Dr. Wortham as it would to explain the sublimity of love to a frigid old maid. So now he's on the stand. He's like, I'm gonna show these fuckers.
Yeah.
Like Gaines' remarks then grew more confrontational. Entertaining reading has never harmed anyone. Men of goodwill, free men should be very grateful for one sentence in a statement made by federal judge John M. Wolseley when he lifted the ban on Ulysses. John Wolseley said, it is only with the normal person that the law is concerned. May I repeat, he said. Now listen, can you just imagine this dude on the stand? May I repeat, he said. It is only with the normal person that the law is concerned. Our American children are, for the most part, normal children. They are bright children. But those who want to prohibit comic magazines seem to see dirty, sneaky, perverted monsters who use the comics as a blueprint for action. Perverted little monsters are far and few between. they don't read comics. The chances are most of them are in school for retarded children. This is what this dude said.
Yeah.
Wow, right? Wow, right? We are afraid of. No, what are we afraid of? Are we afraid of our own children? Do we forget that they are citizens too, and entitled to select what to read or do? Do we think our children are so evil, so simple-minded, that it takes a story of murder to set them to murder, a story of robbery to set them to robbery? Jimmy Walker once remarked that he never knew a girl to be ruined by a book. Nobody has ever been ruined by a comic. Like this dude, like his like I just imagine him giving his testimony kind of loopy, but then almost sort of like how Jack Nichols was in A Few Good Men. Like just having time to question him and like, who was this fucker to question me? Like he doesn't write comic books. Like who was he?
Yeah, no, like I just he's had it. He's done. It's the end of his day. Yeah, no,
It's crazy.
No, and like you said, I think that passion is what kind of bit him in the ass because you can't tell senators they're wrong every now and again. You know.
So,
but basically, out of this inquiry though, you did get the Comics Code Authority.
that was exactly what I was going to ask. So the Comics Code came out now, like directly as a result of this. They had to come up with this.
Well, they didn't have to. They just did. They said we're gonna self-regulate.
Yeah,
and see, then that's when you had like all these kind of like weird stipulations. Like, so let me just read some of the code.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, no.
Is the Comics Code like a rating system so parents know?
It's a precursor to rating systems.
Right. But then it's also what the comic publishers, quote unquote, had to abide by.
They designed it and they held it.
All right. So it says, if crime is depicted, it shall be as sordid and unpleasant activity. Policemen, judges, government officials, and respected institutions shall never be presented in such a way as to create disrespect for established authority. Like you can sit there and show the police doing whatever the fuck they doing, but you couldn't show them to be like you can show someone like you couldn't show someone being disrespectful to the law. Like if any type of disrespect to the law was shunned, they Hydra would reign in this thing.
Well, I mean, that's the joke. Is a lot of 1950s America that we laud is fucking fascist.
Yep.
You know, it's just fucking fascism. You know,
criminals should not be presented so as to be rendered glamorous or to occupy a position which creates a desire of emulation. In every instance, good shall triumph over evil, and a criminal punished for his misdeeds. We'll get you, do-gooder. If the do-gooder didn't got it, it couldn't be printed.
What?
Right.
Oh, yeah. No, good guys won.
I didn't know that was in the Comics Code.
Oh,
no comic magazine shall use the words horror or terror in its title.
Oh.
All scenes of horror, excessive bloodshed, gory or gruesome crime, depravity, lust, sadism, masochism shall not be permitted. What else? Nudity in any form, as is an indecent or undue exposure, couldn't have it. Nudity with meretricious purpose and salacious postures shall not be permitted in the advertising of any product. Clothed figures shall never be presented in such a way as to be offensive or contrary to good taste or mode. Like that was just one book where the publisher in the book he had an astronaut. It was a black astronaut, and they didn't like. He had to change that book because he made the astronaut black. I forgot which book it was, but like he literally, they would not print it. Like it couldn't get approved because the astronaut was black. And they felt it was, so I guess that felt that fell along the line of being kind of threatening or whatever because it was a black guy as an astronaut.
Holy shit. That's threatening?
It's like so much stuff. Like anything that was dealing with homosexuality.
Yeah.
Anything that challenged a proposed status quo.
Illicit sex relations are needed to be hinted at, nor portrayed. Rape scenes as well. Sexual abnormalities are unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
Sexual perversion or any influence to same is strictly forbidden.
I think Judgment Day is the name of that one because of the astronaut one.
Mm-hmm. What's the name of the writer? Did you see that? I thought I had it.
Weird Fantasy number 18.
Right.
In April
right.
1953. Okay. I just like Google that because I just Googled Black Astronaut Comics Code and it came up right away on Wikipedia. The story is by writer Al Feldstein and artist Joe Orlando from Weird Fantasy number 18.
Was it Orlando or Angelo?
Yeah. Joe Orlando.
Okay.
Al Feldstein. But yeah, it was objected to because the central character was black. A human astronaut from the Galactic Republic visiting the planet Cybrenia.
And this, I mean, that's like if you like how you just Googled that, if you Google like comics code and then like seduction of innocence and things like that, you'll see what they have. Like there's there's one Captain America comic book where you see a picture of the Red Skull, and where like the Red Skull initially, I think the issue was printed like in 1941. Like the Red Skull on that, when he looked like a skull and looked at really whatever. But then when they did the reprint had the Red Skull looking sort of like how we saw Red Skull in Captain America. Like he had it looked like he had a mask on as opposed to like Skeletor. They could not make the He-Man comic back then. He-Man could not have been made.
The original Red Skull it did not look like a dude in a mask.
Right.
Yeah, but it looked like a red fucking skull on a body. Yeah. I remember my grandpa really liked horror comics. Mm-hmm. So we always had access to horror comics and Tales from the Crypt and all that shit. That's why I like all those Hammer
even like in the 50s, I mean, you did have like those superheroes that you had like Disney, but like kids back then, it was all about cops and robbers.
Cops and robbers, cowboys and
even like the Batman. So it was almost like it was going to be that thing where you have crime being the major storylines in comics, where now it's more fantasy and fan fiction. Like back then, it wasn't.
Back then, it was Law and Order.
Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like when you had Captain America fighting Nazis, you had Batman fighting the mob. You wouldn't be like Batman wasn't fighting fucking the Joker. He wasn't fighting Captain Cold. People like that, like they wasn't fighting against the same kind of thing. So back then, those kids, all they knew was what like Scarface, Al Capone, Untouchable, stuff like that from their parents who grew up in like the 20s and 30s. So now it's the 50s. It's like we're still dealing with like mob type shit. Yeah. So it's one of those things like you don't.
I was gonna say, I think keeping in perspective that it's so hard to put yourself in this world, immerse yourself, because we know what we know. But like in this time, we didn't have HBO Max and like Netflix and like Marvel, the MCU and all that. Like this was their cool world. This was their cool shit. Like their cool shit was in comics.
And I just imagine these people who expecting these kids to read comic books. It was like they was expecting some little kid. Like let's say if the girl was reading the comic, she's flipping the page. Oh look, it's June Cleaver. Like just like looking at it, they're like, oh wow, look, he's skipping rocks. That's what this kid wanted to read a book about some kids skipping rocks. Like
I'm thinking about this though. I'm just blown away that in April of 1953 there was a comic book about a black astronaut I'm surprised that
Well, I mean,
existed. I'm not
like-
surprised they would boycott it, but I'm just thinking, and just all the conversations we've had with TBJ in 54 episodes of Nerd School is just like, it really makes me realize like what that must have done for any kids who were black. That's important to see themselves as anything.
Well, I
That
mean,
probably
you
made a
have
big difference to kids.
like I've been watching this new iteration of Wonder Years, and it's like in the 60s, early
Yeah, I
60s,
watched a little bit
but it's
of
the
that the
black
other day.
family. But you know they like
Don
so-
Cheadle.
Yeah, but like he's in school with his friends, and they're reading comic books. So
Yeah.
like you had kids like they were reading. So it's one of those things like as a black kid in the 50s, you pick up a book and you see like usually in the, like even some of the imagery like they had of like Africans, like some of that stuff was kind of banned too.
Yeah.
But it's like when you see something positive as a black kid looking through that comment, like, oh, cool. Like you're not assuming you think, like, well, I want to go ahead and shoot somebody because you were like, it'd be nice to see a black detective or a black astronaut and be like,
Yeah.
It's
I
just,
could
it's
do
just-
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like subconscious stuff that we don't think about or talk about, but it's meaningful and it's real. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's not going to make you, but it's important to see yourself. I mean, there have been so many studies. It's important to see yourself somewhere.
Well, like even like you said earlier, even today now, they're like some things like if you have like I don't have kids, like I have a young nephew, and I used to buy my nephew video games,
yeah,
and we would sit there, we would play together, whatever. But like let's say my nephew used to love 007 on Nintendo 64, but my nephew wouldn't be like, oh, I'm playing 007. I'm inspired. I'm going around shooting people. Let me like he knew enough to be like at like 11, 10 years old, they're like, I'm not going to go outside and shoot a motherfucker because I played 007.
Well, I
like,
mean, oddly enough, I think our parents and our adults have more time to help kids than they did back then. I think they were probably a lot more worried about it just because they weren't fucking spending time with their kids. They don't know what the fuck they're doing.
yeah, they're too busy worrying about the Cold War to give a shit about their
Yeah,
kids.
Exactly.
That's
They're too busy fucking working and drinking and
that's exactly it.
taking whatever Valium you need to take to get you through your fucking day.
As the one guy on here who does have kids, you've hit it exactly on the head. Is the fact that, and I'm guilty of both sides, like of not. When my kids were little, when my son was really getting into video games, his buddies were playing Call of Duty. He's like 7 or 8, and I'm like, I don't think that's good. That can't be good. Part of me is like, I've tried to play and I'm terrible at it, but I'm just like, I was like, I don't think that much violence and war is good for a little guy. Like you'll have
Right.
plenty of time to play that when you get older. But the key, when I started letting him, my son now plays GTA. We play GTA together, and we're.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. Like, so like,
But
with me and my
as a
nephew,
The key is, I'm just saying the key is, I'm sorry, Art, to cut you off, but I'm just like, which I'm guessing what you're going to say too, is like, I know him now, and I know him well enough to know that he's not going to go out and shoot everybody. I trust that he's, but it's just knowing his maturity level.
right, exactly. Like, so like my thing was like, like I would sit there and I would play these games with my nephew, and it's just like, and then we had like that closeness.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things where it's like I even just being around him, you know that you can say like, okay, well, you kind of want to trust the kid, but then also it's like you don't automatically just go into it thinking like, oh well, he's a young. And again, I don't have kids, so I can't say. But it's like it's one of those things where a lot of times, to me, it seemed like back in those days, they put so much onto their kids to do this, do that. But then when it came to them being by themselves, if they got them a comic book, it wasn't like they sat there and read it with them.
No,
It was
like get
they
out of
gave
here.
it to them. Right.
Yeah,
Let me
smoke
go read
my
your comic book.
cigarettes and drink and get
They
drunk
trusted
and
the kid to do all their chores,
Yeah.
but they don't trust
Send
the
them
kid
into
to read
their
a
room,
fucking comic.
Right.
Oh, and trust me, as little kids, there are times you want to just get out of here, go play with your shit, and let me drink and smoke.
Oh yeah.
But once you know them and you know it. But I started when my kids were little. We did Lego Batman, Lego Star Wars, and there's no blood. It's just you hit a guy and he falls apart in the
Part of the
Lego.
bricks, right?
And it's not violent.
Those
And
are
when
good
my kid
games.
was real little, he's like 6. Like that's enough for him. He didn't want to see Like he was worried about.
But then it's
Star Wars.
also like,
He was
so
like, is there
you know,
blood?
now,
I don't want to see blood. I'm like, okay, let's check out Star Wars because people get their head cut off and there's no blood.
on the flip side of that, nowadays, like, you know, because Nintendo is popular again amongst families. Like, I'm in a couple of groups on Facebook, like Nintendo, like a couple of gamers over 30.
Sex groups?
Oh, weird.
Gamers over
Nintendo
30.
sex groups.
Gamers over 30 or whatever. And like, just sitting there reading like some of the comments, you know, there are people in there like, yeah, I'm getting my kid a Nintendo Switch for Christmas. Kid's like 6. Or like, here's my kid, he's 4-year-old. 4, he's playing such and such, but he's playing like Mario. But it's one of those things where it's like, and then you can kind of like, you have parental lock and things like that, but it's still like.
There is a bit about having a kid that you can't wait to recreate your childhood through their eyes. Like I couldn't wait to get him into, I can play video games with him. I can do this with him. I want him to like this. And then you get to the point where he's like, my son's 16. He doesn't like the shit that I like. He likes some things that I like.
But then you also, it's almost like you nurture them.
Yeah.
You like, for instance, like I always tell people, I grew up, like my dad doesn't watch football. He might, you know, as a guy, you know, like someone mentions a football game or something, or like he'll call me, be like, "Oh, you watching the game?" kind of thing. But he don't really give a shit about football.
Yeah.
My granddad, and my dad got me into liking baseball. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To the point where like we would listen to or watch baseball together. Me and my dad growing up used to always go to like the baseball game. That's what got me into baseball, was spending time with my dad. Even like I grew up with my dad in the house, but still just with a dude with 3 sisters growing up, just spending time with my dad at the baseball game.
That's why you know Chuck Knobloch and Brad Hoskins.
Right. But it's like one of those things where it's like spending time with the kid. Like my thing is growing up, like I've done things in my life that some people may never ever find out about. But it wasn't because
you killed a man.
It wasn't because it was in me kind of thing. It was like one of those things, like even when I was younger, because of the upbringing, I knew better. Like at 12, if I read something, doesn't mean that I'm going to go out and commit that thing. Whereas a lot of times, I feel like some of these kids who, like even nowadays, we have like these kids that are like 12, 13, 14, they're killing people. It's like, you got to look at what their parents did. It's not necessarily like, oh, I played Grand Theft Auto, I seen this person, you know, this is like these games, when they come out with these and develop these games, it's like things that are going on in the world. It has nothing like, oh, you know what, let's make a game where we shoot and kill people in hopes that people in real life will play this game and think like, hey, let's go out and shoot and kill people. It's like stuff's already out there in the world. It's art. It's just a portrayal of that.
Art is a reflection of society.
It's a reflection of society
and life.
And in fact, it's quite the opposite. Like I would never. I'm probably the least violent guy you're going to meet. But I love when I have a stressful day. I love to turn that on and kill some people. I'm never going to kill anybody
because
in real life.
It's an escapism.
It's an escape. It's an outlet. And video games are for adults now, and it wasn't then. Like just
even. I remember like comic books. I remember there was still that whole notion that comic books were strictly for kids. I remember one time going into a dollar store, buying something, and I had a brown paper bag under my arm from the comic book store. Yeah. And this girl, the cashier, you know, at the time, you know, back in the day, when you had a brown paper bag and it was thin, first thing people thought was it's porn. So she asked me, she's like, what do you have? What's in your bag? I was like, oh, it's a comic book. And then she looked at me and she's like, don't you think you're a little old to be reading comic books? Oh. I was like, well, this comic book is a book that's rated for someone over the age of 17. And I almost wanted to pull the comic book out to show her the imagery in this comic book, just to say, like, this ain't for your kids. But it's one of those things where it's like, even if it was, like, it's one of those, like, you know, you have kids now who could probably read books which were like, let's say like a Spawn book, and be like, they may be like 12 years old. But if they have and they have a good upbringing, and if they're not already have this mental disposition for violence, they're not going to read Spawn and think that, hey, I could get some chains and whips, light it on fire, go outside and, sling it at someone around their neck and devour their body of their soul. They don't think like that. But back then, I guess they just assumed that all kids were prone to violence. Like, let me this horror comic. Like, oh, this kid's going to read this.
Well, if you think about it, maybe they were just worried because of their own tendencies to violence.
Exactly.
They're just worried about. That's why they're so afraid of what the kids could do, because they knew what they were capable of.
We objectify women. So in this book, you shouldn't have these women with these big breasts, because now this kid's going to objectify a woman. The whole time he's at the strip club, objectify the woman.
So much of all kinds of vilification and hatred and fear is all self-reflection and self-fear and like homophobia. They would say homophobia, guys, their biggest fear, guys who are homophobic, are like, I don't want to be hit on. I don't want to be, harassed and sexualized, because that's how they treat women. And they think that's what all men do. And so it's always like a projection of what you are and what you really do. I don't know, all this stuff. But that's great. We got way, way off track. But that's good. But this is, but it all comes down to, and we kind of hit this. We kind of meandered our way to it. But it's like, good parenting is knowing your kid and knowing being there and spending the time and knowing they're not going to do these things. So, with all that,
being there to answer their fucking questions. With more than a, hey, Google that shit.
So let me ask you guys this with the comics code. This is probably just gonna be something you guys just know from living in the world of comics. So obviously the comics code has been adapted and changed throughout the year. Is it like a thing?
It's been generally dropped.
Oh, it's dropped completely. It's not even a
like
thing
they
anymore?
like over. I think the last companies. What was it?
I remember one was
hold on to it. DC and RG Comics held on to it till 2011.
2011?
2011. It lasted in some form, not the form,
not the
form that,
but it adapted throughout the years.
Talked about.
Yeah, because like even if you look at like some of DC, like they're like statuettes and like any issue of like Power Girl. Power Girl,
the boob window.
Yeah, she's like this buxom woman.
Oh yeah,
and it's over
like
the
sexualization of females. That all those aspects were gone from the comic code by the 60s.
Yeah,
like they didn't
free love, baby, free love.
Yeah, they didn't make it. They didn't make it out of the 50s. They're like, all right, well, we're gonna keep all the blood and gore.
I mean, and to this day, you still have. Like Wonder Woman has gone through so many costume changes in the last few years.
I'll say this. I love Wonder Woman. I dig the pants.
Right.
The pants are sweet.
And like even Supergirl on
you remember the little like bikini bottom?
No, the pants, the full-length pants.
Full-length pants.
Like they've been trying to stick Wonder Woman in pants since the 70s, and it rarely works.
And it's like it's always
watching Injustice, the movie.
I don't think I even know what you're talking about. I don't know if I've seen Wonder Woman.
Probably not. I mean,
it's always in underwear, like bikini.
It's generally the bikinis, but no, there's in the latest animated feature, Injustice, based on the comic, based on the video game. They got her in pants. It was so refreshing.
Okay. Is it like a suit, like a pantsuit, like Hillary Clinton?
It might be like a two-piece suit, like a pants and bottom type thing.
Well, it's like a pants. She's got the knee-high boots, got a halter top.
Was there anything else about these hearings that we didn't cover?
Art did a fucking wonderful job of it.
He really jumped in. All right. Well, thank you guys for covering this whole thing. And Gruff actually told me, like, he was like, you should have Andy and Art and TBJ do this because it's the comics code. So I was like, real quick, I was like, and I've been wanting you two to connect because I knew this would be like a love connection here with you two. So it's like kind of a cool thing because Gruff is a school nerd guy anyway. He could totally be
I could be a visiting. Visiting lecturer
for sure, because he's definitely in the nerd category. I got a couple more things before we get out of April, though. So this is going to be the longest episode ever.
That's what editing's for.
Yeah, I'll definitely do some editing.
And I'm really happy to say that I was here for it. I was here for it.
Here for it all.
I'm here
April
for it all.
22nd, the U.S. Senate Army McCarthy televised hearings began. Since we had all these televised hearings. So
They do a lot of I guess they did this also in the 90s? Was it the 90s when we had the Ali North stuff?
Oh,
Yeah.
that was
It's like all these congressional
that was the
hearings.
80s. That was the
the
IRA
80s?
Contra affairs.
Yeah. It's like
It was before
all these
cable. They had to
channels.
put something on TV.
right,
but you got to think this time TV was still new. Like some
right.
stations,
Like
didn't
it was
exist.
like they were just like, fuck it, let's put it on.
And they have grasping for stuff to be on. I'm like, my mom was just in town. She was telling my kids, and my kids were blown away. She was like, television went off at night. Like, I
remember that.
Television only
So do
worked
I.
a couple hours a day.
And you hear snow.
Oh yeah. I remember waking up into the static because I'd fall asleep with the TV.
But like in
on.
her time, it stopped at like 9 o'clock. You know, it was like,
Wow.
but anyway,
This concludes our broadcast day.
yes. Well, you guys remember Joe McCarthy? He was the guy who accused everybody of being communist, like McCarthyism and all that. So
Yeah.
this is the downfall of Joe McCarthy right here. April 22nd. It's the U.S. Senate Army McCarthy televised hearings. McCarthy had already been infamous for his aggressive interrogations of suspected communists, but he was a Wisconsin senator. Joe McCarthy earned more notoriety via these televised 1954 congressional hearings because he had turned his investigations to Army security, but the Army in turn charged him with using improper influence to win preferential treatment for former staff member, Private G. David Shine, who was a former member of the Senator's staff who had been drafted. So he was using his preferential treatment to get him out of the war. McCarthy countercharged that the Army was trying to derail his embarrassing investigations of Army security practices through blackmail and intimidation. When the senator tried to emphasize Army lawyer Joseph Welch's communist ties, Welch delivered his famous line.
Let us not assassinate this lad further, Senator. You've done enough. Have you no sense of decency, sir? At long last, have you left no sense of decency?
So I don't know if that sounds familiar to you guys, but that's like
I think I've heard that before.
That's like a famous thing. And so, although McCarthy was acquitted, his popular support waned and his political career was soon over because of that moment. These hearings dominated national television from April all the way to June.
Wow.
They were one of the first congressional hearings to be televised, and they got national attention because of McCarthy's notoriety. And the camera made clear his methods and manner, greatly weakening his popular support, leading to his censure by the Senate on December 2nd, 1950.
Back when censure meant something.
Yeah, when it really meant something. Now that everybody's getting censored every 5 seconds.
Now they
And the
won.
last thing, we're going to end April of 1954 on a birthday.
Amy hates birthdays. Amy hates birthdays.
Whose birthday is it?
All right, see if you can guess this one.
We're 1-1.
Born in the Brooklyn borough of New York City, his father, Coleman, collected jokes that he heard while serving in World War II. His mother, Betty, and her parents, Salim and Salah Hasni from Aleppo, Syria, they're Jews, and their nationality was stated as Turkish when they immigrated in 1917, as Syria was under the Ottoman Empire. Salah's mother, Garez Dayan, who is this person's great-grandmother, was a member of the noted Dayan rabbinic family who traced their paternal ancestry back to the medieval exilarchs and from the exilarchs back to the biblical King David.
Damn.
This person's second cousin is musician and actor Evan. I can't say his last name.
No.
Larry David.
Close. This person grew
Mel
up
Brooks.
in Massapequa, New York, and attended Massapequa High School on Long
I know
Island.
this person.
Team
I know
colors,
this.
navy blue and gold. Team name the Chiefs. Notable alumni that went to this high school are Joey Buttafuoco and Mary Jo
Joey.
Buttafuoco, as well as Brian Kilmeade and Brian Setzer from the Stray Cats. At age of 16, this person whose birthday it is spent time volunteering in Kibbutz Sar in Israel.
Carl Reiner.
He attended State University of New York at Oswego and transferred after a second year to Queens College City University of New York once he graduated with a degree in communications and theater before he got into stand-up comedy.
Jerry Seinfeld.
Jerry Seinfeld.
Nice.
Woo!
Nice.
There you go. Jerry Seinfeld's birthday, April 29th.
Why didn't I get that right away?
Yeah,
I was way
Carl
off.
Reiner,
I
Carl Reiner
was
was
guessing way
older.
too old.
Yeah, way too old. Yeah, think about the age now. But yeah, Jerry Seinfeld's going to be 70 in 2024. But yeah, so that was Jerry Seinfeld's birthday.
We went 2 for 1. 2 for 1.
Yeah, you guys did good on the
We won.
birthdays.
Hey man,
Now-
they were all guests, right?
Those were good guests. And when I first did the birthdays, I would sprinkle in like movie titles of things they've been in just to like find puns, but I didn't
Well,
put that
you
much.
had a
work
harder
into it.
audience. Like, I mean, Art and I were actually actively trying to listen to you do birthdays. I mean, nothing against Amy. Part of the reason why I like listening to Amy and you talk about birthdays is her complete and utter lack of interest in it. I think that's a nice dynamic.
Which reminds me, I looked up on Castbox, which is an app that I don't think a lot of people use for their podcast.
Yeah, that's what I actually use Castbox in my
Do you
podcast.
use it? If
Yeah, that's one of my main.
If you look up American Timelines on there,
Mhm.
that's the one we made quite a bit of fun of. Somebody who gave us an angry review. Like he actually
Is that the? I think I remember seeing that comment.
the Brent Nelson guy who hated me, but likes
Right.
me. And he was like, man, if he would just shut up, this would be good because the woman is okay. But I happened to be just looking on there again, and I hadn't looked at it since. It was just this one guy, Brent Nelson. I was like, oh, just one guy hates us. But then I just downloaded Castbox again the other day, and I have to read this. This is from this past August. This guy named Mike Miles. I gotta. I don't know why.
It is like this segment should be called Joe Reed's Mean Comments.
I read tweets, yeah. And he said Mike Miles. Now here, I worked with a guy named Mike Miles. It's spelled differently though. So at first I was like, Mike, I thought we were good friends. But this guy on August 20th of 2021 said, American Timelines could really be a great podcast, but the husband is a loudmouth, disrespectful asshole. He ruins it. He said he ruins it. Not funny. Shut up and let your wife talk. And so I was just like, oh my God, I guess. I mean, at the beginning of American Timelines, that was what I thought the shtick was. Like her trying to do a true crime and me trying to be funny. And it was on purpose, but I was like, boy, this guy really hated it.
I'm waiting for the moment that I go through and read the comments on some of ours where someone's really giving me shit. Like I want to be shitted on. I want to be shitted on the way Andy sometimes shit on me. Not to be confused with me liking scat porn, Joe. But it's like, I just want to read the comments one day and be like, wow, this damn art star. Sometimes this guy just like, what is he like? Some sort of fucking Nazi? Like, I just can't wait to see. I don't want to be called the Nazi, but I just can't wait to see someone literally come for me in the comments. I think that's going to make my day.
I haven't seen a lot of those on Nerd School.
Like when you can elicit that depth of an emotional
It showed that,
yeah.
you've made it.
That
You made it, Joe.
something. Yes, you've done something. If you can piss somebody off.
As someone that used to really enjoy pissing people off at my job, like the customers, like it was something. Like it was something special when I'd walk down the street and strangers would tell me to fuck off.
Like, I feel great now.
It's like, wow, that's something.
I made a difference in someone's life.
I did, yo.
I
Good or
just
bad,
know-
you made a fucking difference.
I'm just waiting for the fan art for Nerd School, the fan art of Art Star like destroying somebody or something. Like that's what we need. But yeah. Anyway,
At the same time, I'm destroying someone, but I'm cutting a nice furry rabbit, rubbing his head like Dr. Evil or like
and you're gonna have to figure out how you're gonna deal with groupies, Art Star. That's a whole other thing. and on the Gruff and Loud show, which is a YouTube channel, we sold our first merch. We sold a drawstring bag. Somebody's got a Gruff and Loud drawstring bag.
Oh,
someone will be very surprised when they get that in the mail and go, I don't remember this. How did I end up with this?
But hopefully they wear that around and people see that Gruff and Loud show. What's that? And they'll watch it. So thank you for being here, Gruff from the Gruff and Loud show and Lord Artemis Prime from the Nerd School podcast. This was
more than a pleasure, Joe.
Mixing you two together has been fabulous, just like I thought it would be.
And Gruff showed me sweet battle cat that he had.
Yeah, I know, and Art's just as wonderful as I dreamed.
You're dreaming about Art Star, huh?
Well, only in my waking times.
But thanks for listening. Please rate, review, and subscribe American Timelines. Thanks for listening to this super long episode of 1954. We had fun. We went off on some tangents, and you guys are fun to be around. So I'm definitely going to bring you guys back.
And we are available for bookings.
Yeah, these guys are available. You can reach them at, what's your Twitter again, Art Star?
Art Star version 9.
Artstar V9 at Artstar V9. Gruff, you're not on Twitter, are you?
No, you can reach me through Joe, American Timelines or Nerd School.
Just reach out
how to get a hold of me.
At History for Jerks, and I'll send him an email. I'll send him a postal letter.
Yeah, I'm exclusively snail mail.
I'll send him a telegram.
I gave my postal carrier a Christmas card every year.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Chuck Berry.
It's getting hard to get it back. We've all gone one way around the track, and we've all ended where we started, and we seem to lost our map. And what went up is coming down. You heard the song, you know its sound, and it may seem that we are floating, but we never left the ground. Oh, it could happen to you. Oh, and all your dreams become new.
Matt Truman Ego Trip is the greatest band of all time. Buy their music.